Before we get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that is released by GoCollect. And if you're interested, head over to Regie Collects here on YouTube. Regie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector and the host of the GoCollect Speculation video, and I want to welcome you to another episode. As a reminder, in this video, we are going to look at a handful of blog posts that have been sent in to GoCollect and also posted to GoCollect.com. Now, a few things to keep in mind. I'm only going to talk about a handful of these blog posts, but rest assured that there is a ton of other helpful information that is available to you on GoCollect.com. For those of you out there that are of the analytical type, this first blog post is one that you have to check out. In this blog post, the blogger does an amazing job of testing a hypothesis that he has about the impact of increasing census numbers, books sent into CGC, and the corresponding values associated with those books. The hypothesis here is that as census numbers increase, there is going to be a corresponding decrease in the value of these books. To test this hypothesis, the blogger looked at a handful of really hot books, including books like Venom, issue number 26, Batman, issue number 93, Iron Man, issue number 1, Star Wars, issue number 6, and Tigum-verse issue number 1. Again, all of these books are hot books that are actively being submitted into CGC, and so this was a great set of books to kind of work with. And I'm not going to tell you where this experiment landed, but I will tell you that the findings were a little confounding. And so this is, again, one that you might want to look at. But the blogger didn't necessarily stop with just this set of books. They went on to analyze some books in a slightly different way by looking at one specific title, one specific issue, but all of the variants associated with that issue as well. And they specifically looked at Thor issue number 5, and there were several first prints of this book. There was a second print and also 2 third prints that were examined. And again, the analysis that was done here is very, very interesting. And so if you are a data hound, a data guru, this is a blog post you should read. And I'm definitely going to be interested in hearing what your thoughts are based upon the analysis that was done. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there some caveats that we should think about as we interpret the findings that the blogger landed on? As I mentioned, this blog post is linked down in the description. So here's the question. What do you do when you are priced out of Silver Age keys? And this is something that a lot of people are facing right now with the rising value of popular books. And I'm specifically talking about popular Silver Age books like X-Men number 1 or Avengers number 1 or Fantastic Four number 1, Amazing Fantasy 15, just to name a few. What happens when you are priced out of even being able to afford low-grade copies of those books? That is something that our next blogger is attempting to answer. And in this blog post, the blogger highlights some things that we might want to consider if we find ourselves in this type of predicament. One of the first recommendations that the blogger makes is that we might want to consider picking up the issue number 1 of Silver Age books. So not X-Men 1 or Avengers 1, not necessarily that, but books like Iron Man issue number 1 or Silver Surfer number 1 or Captain Marvel number 1 or, for that matter, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. issue number 1. And the thought here is that some of these books might actually be more affordable and haven't necessarily seen the price spikes that we've seen with some of the books that I mentioned a short while ago. That's not to say that these books are cheap. It's to say that they might be slightly more affordable than, again, X-Men number 1, which has soared to all new heights. Another recommendation that is actually made in this blog post is that people think about picking up second appearances of some popular characters. This is potentially another way to kind of participate. This blog post is linked down in the description. It's worth a read, and it's definitely worth a consideration. There are a lot of people that are incredibly excited about Doctor Strange, and they're excited because the Doctor Strange movie is going to be coming to the MCU, and that movie has a lot of implications for the future. And as a result of this excitement, what we are seeing is that Doctor Strange related books are changing hands more often. We see a lot more sales of Doctor Strange related comics. But what's interesting, in this blog post, the blogger talks about several books that, yes, are changing hands a lot more often, but are not necessarily going up in value. In one case, the blogger talks a lot about a character that is associated with Doctor Strange that is rumored to be coming to the MCU, and I'm specifically talking about Nightmare. Now, we are not talking about Nightmare's first appearance, which happened to be in Strange Tales issue number 110, nor are we talking about Nightmare's second appearance, which was in Strange Tales issue number 116. Instead, we are talking about Doctor Strange issue number 170, where Nightmare is basically antagonizing the Ancient One. And again, this book is trading hands fairly often, but we are not seeing an increase in value. But we are seeing people buy this book up. And the question is why? Why is that happening? And if it continues and Nightmare actually appears, could this be a book that goes up in value again? I don't know. In the blog post, the blogger goes on to talk about a few other books that you might want to consider if you believe that there is a lot of, potential for Doctor Strange down the road. Will Marvel resurrect Killmonger to appear in the next Black Panther movie? That is the question that our next blogger is essentially posing in his blog post. And honestly, we're asking you, do you think that Killmonger is going to be brought back? If the answer is yes, this is a blog post that you want to read, because not only does the blogger highlight a couple of books that you may want to check out and think about picking up, but the blogger also highlights potentially how Killmonger could be resurrected, at least how he was resurrected in comics, and potentially how he could be resurrected in the MCU. And it all ties back to the Shang-Chi movie that is going to be dropping. If you haven't seen that trailer, I encourage you to right here on YouTube, go find that trailer, watch it, because it is awesome. With that said, there is a path forward through the Shang-Chi to potentially bring Killmonger back. If that happens and Killmonger appears in the Black Panther 2 movie, as I mentioned, there are a couple of books that you want to check out. The first of which is his first appearance, which happened to be in Jungle Action issue number 6. The second book that you may want to look at is Jungle Action issue number 7, and this is his second appearance as well as his origin story. Now, what's great about this specific book is that this book has actually dropped in value by 51% over the last 3 years. And in fact, you can actually find raw grade copies of issue number 7 on eBay for as little as $20. At the end of the day, none of us know what the future holds for the Black Panther franchise. We know that a movie is going to be made, but at this point, we don't know a whole lot at all. So there's a lot of speculation, and potentially Killmonger will be back. So Archie and the gang are turning 80 years this year. That's right, Archie Comics is reaching an incredible milestone. And that is the very point of this next blog post, in which the blogger goes through and highlights several books that you may want to check out if you are a fan of Archie and the gang. And I'm not going to talk about each one of these books, but I do want to highlight just a couple of them for you. The first one is the first appearance of several characters, that being Pep Comics issue number 22. And this historic book introduces Archie, Jughead, Betty, Mr. Weatherby, and others to the market. And in December of 2018, a Blue Label 5.0 copy of this book sold for $91,000. And a month prior to that, a 2.5 copy sold for $36,000. I'll be completely honest, I didn't know that Archie Comics went for that kind of money. I really had no frame of reference, and it was really cool to kind of read what's happening with these books, especially given that it's the 80th anniversary. Another book that I wanted to highlight for you is Pep Comics issue number 26. And this book should be of interest to collectors and investors because it is the first time that we see Veronica Lodge in a comic. The most recent sales of this book happened in March of 2019, where the book was sold for around $3,000 for a 1.8. In February of 2018, the year before, a 2.5 sold for $6,500. And again, I had no frame of reference to know how these books perform. And for those that don't know, I actually purchased a collection of 100,000 books more than a year ago. I have a ton of Pep comics and Archie comics. None of them are the books that are highlighted in this blog post, but again, it's kind of cool to have a little frame of reference to understand and better appreciate those books that are actually in my collection. If you are interested in learning more about Archie, this is a blog post that you want to click on because I've only scratched the surface of some of the wonderful content that is contained in this post. Check it out. This next blog post, to some degree or another, is a journey of discovery. And I say that because many of us are oftentimes exposed to different things and we wonder why something is the way that it is, but we don't necessarily take the time to dig into the details. That essentially is what happened to our blogger and is what is captured in this blog post. In the case of the blogger, they had been exposed to Adam Strange over the decades. They had seen this character talked about in Overstreet. They had heard people covet copies of Showcase issue number 17, the first appearance of Adam Strange, but never fully understood the why behind it until recently. And as the blogger dug into the details, they had some very interesting discoveries. When you dig into the CGC Census data around Showcase issue number 17, what you see is that there are 0 graded copies of this book at a 9.2 or at a 9.4 or a 9.6 or a 9.8. That means that you're looking at a 9.0 of this book, and there are only 2 copies. You have to go all the way down to a 4.0 before you really start to see substantive inventory of Showcase 17. And even at a 4.0, there are only 32 graded copies of this book out there. And digging a little bit more, there have been fewer than 30 sales of this comic in 11 years. That is crazy. That is crazy to think about just how few copies are out there, and moreover, just how few copies are actually trading hands from year to year to year. And so again, this is a really cool blog post that I am thankful that I read, because Adam Strange is actually back, and there is an ongoing series that I've read a few times. I rather enjoyed it, but I never really understood the history of the character. This blog post helped me to better appreciate where this character comes from, and rest assured, if I ever see one of these books in the wild, I'm definitely going to pick it up, because this is clearly something that is coveted by a lot of people. If you have any interest in journeys, if you will, into discovery, or even Adam Strange for that matter, this is a blog post that you want to check out. So there you have it. We have reached the end of another recap. If you enjoyed this video, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button and tune in next week when we get to do this all over again.